Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Walk the Dog with Riot Mort. It is Tuesday, 5:30 a.m., nice and early. The sun is just rising, the birds are chirping, and I have to work today. Yep, it's a normal work day. A lot of people who have been on vacation are coming back, so there's going to be a lot of catching up on how set 15's doing, how set 16's doing, a lot of development stuff behind the scenes. So should be a relatively, it's not that busy of a day though, it's just general work to do. Big thing is the patch goes out tomorrow. So, which is funny because that'll mean it's been 2 weeks since I started doing this, but that patch will mean, the usual wake up and check to see if the meta broke or anything like that. The cycle continues. Yesterday was nice. Just got to kind of play games. I went down the Expedition 33 rabbit hole, played that a bit more, got more caught up on that way. Because that question got asked so much this weekend. It was fascinating. It felt like every hour where someone was coming in and being like, what do you feel about Expedition 33? Which was so interesting. So I decided to go down that rabbit hole. I spent probably a good 4 or 5 hours making sure I understood everything about that a little bit more. Good for game design research and things like that. And yeah, very, very weird game. Very interesting. So anyway, all right, questions today. We have some questions. Today's were mixed. It was interesting. So, okay, first question. What is your most and least liked component? I mean, this is an interesting question in the sense that obviously from the Mort designer standpoint, all components should be good, right? For example, there was that period for a good few sets where Cloak was basically, terrible, right? Anytime you got a Cloak, you were sad. And, that wasn't great. So our goal should be that most people's answer to this question is, I don't know, who cares? They're all the same, right? Augments aren't supposed to be something, or sorry, not augments. Components aren't supposed to be the kind of thing that getting the wrong one can totally throw you off. Now, obviously, if you're hey, I'm going to one-trick Bastion Morgana, you like tears. Tears are pretty necessary to your build. So there's going to be some of that bias. But that should be our goal. Now, that being said, to my personal play style, what I will say is, I think my favorite is probably Belt. I love getting belts in my opener. It can lead into a Sunfire or a Warmogs, which I find both of those items to be really, really good in the early game. I like Redemption a lot. I'm hoping we can get Spirit Visage to a point where it feels pretty powerful as well. I like those defensive options. I'm not as big a fan of, Sterix, and then Morello's has kind of fallen off. But either way, that win streak playstyle I like with that early Warmogs continues to be my favorite. I especially like Belt when you have the Vi encounter, because then it's you can really get that early Warmogs. So, I don't know. I think my unique player brand would say Belt. As far as least favorite, interestingly enough, I find myself not liking Glove. I don't know. Glove is you can make a Thieves Gloves, but it always feels a little weird. There's IE and JG, but those are better in stage 3 and 4 and stuff like that. Quicksilver is obviously pretty awkward of an item right now. It's not a bad item, it's just awkward. So, Guardbreaker. Although, actually, you know what? Post-patch, Guardbreaker will be pretty dang good. Although, I will never understand, by the way, all these people building Guardbreaker on Elise without crit. That feels so weird. Just get the spell crit. I don't get it. Anyway, yeah, I think that's kind of my answer. I think the other thing I'll say is Sword is also probably close to one of my favorites, just because Sword feels like you can build Shojin, which is useful on so many people. You can build, Deathblade IE, which are really solid. BT is fine, especially depends on the set. This set, BT is not as great, but other sets it is. So yeah, I don't know. Now those Radiant components that we never shipped, those would have been fun. But yeah, again, the thing to talk about here is that our design goal should be that players are always like, they actually don't have an answer to this question. So, but there will always be their biases, right? Like, you take a player who generally leans more AP, and obviously they're not going to like Sword as much as they're going to like Rod and Tier and things like that. Cloak, I don't mind Cloak that much anymore. Cloak is generally fine. You get your early sparks. Dragon Claw, I think, is a pretty good item. Yeah, I don't know. So, it's kind of my answer. I know not the most like interesting answer, but at the same time, again, that's our goal. Components should feel pretty similar. All right, next question is, what IP, if you could, just snap your fingers and have any IP, would you want to collab with for TFT? So again, I'm only going to speak for my answer here. This isn't Riot's answer, because this is the kind of decision that I would have basically no input on the team. It becomes a much more like executive producer plus publishing kind of thing that they would then come to me and go, hey, we've made an agreement with Hot Wheels and now you have to do a Hot Wheels set. Go make it, And my job would be to work with the team to make this Hot Wheels set. That's kind of how that works operationally. So no one's going to come to me and be like, what IP do you think we should make a Hot Wheels set? Yeah. If that was the order that came down, so be it. Someone might be like, what do you think? Just for like a slight nugget. Or if anything, they might come to me and say, do you think players would love a Hot Wheels set? To which I could kind of go, what are you guys smoking? But yeah. So again, but assuming I could have infinite power and snap my fingers in any IP. So there's two answers to this question. The first one is, if it's a set that doesn't include the Runeterra League of Legends stuff, right? It's just like we're going to make a TFT set with a different IP. The answer is always Pokemon. It's always Pokemon. I think, and yes, I know there is a Pokemon one out there in China. The Pokemon Unite team did one. I think they missed a lot of the magic that makes TFT great. But I think if someone gave me unrestricted access to Pokemon and said, go make a auto battler, I can make a damn good auto battler. So Pokemon would be my answer there. Now, if you have to merge it with the League of Legends IP, so let's say it's like an IP that's going to be 50-50 with Runeterra champions, this one gets harder. Because something like Pokemon, I feel like it'd be weird to see Ari and Charizard and Yasuo and Mewtwo all fighting on the same arena. That feels weird. That feels tacked on. I don't think I'd want to do that. I think I'd much rather have a little bit more humanoid characters. And then it starts to get really tricky because there aren't a lot of like amazing humanoid fantasy. Like, not to copy Magic here, but like Final Fantasy would be cool because then you could have like Ari and Yasuo fighting Cloud and Tifa and Zidane and stuff like that. Like, okay, I'm kind of down for that. But again, that's sort of cheating because literally we're about to get this sick Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy set. So it's like, I want that collab too. But that, I mean, I grew up in the Final Fantasy 6 to 10 era, so wouldn't bother me. My personal bias also, I would say, trying to do Smash Brothers. Like, just give me the whole Nintendo library. But it's like, do I want Yasuo and Ari fighting Mario, Inkling, Link, Bowser? Yeah, kinda, to be honest. Cho'Gath versus Bowser, I'm down. So, I don't know, that could be kind of fun. And that way you can have a vertical origin where it's like Hyrule, Mushroom Kingdom, I could do that. So, I think that'd be my answer. I can't tell that story. Dang it. But, it's a fun exercise to think about, like, if you had to make Bowser a 5 cost, what would he do, And there's a lot of really fun answers there. So, yeah. Yeah, so I guess without IP, Pokemon, with Smash or Final Fantasy. I'm trying to think, what other IPs are there really? Oh wait, I mean, okay, wait. All right, time to put my business hat on. Time to be an executive producer here. Roblox. If we want the audience to expand, we just put Roblox in TFT. And that way you have Yasuo and Ari fighting Roblox version of Yasuo and Ari, and we get all the kids. There you go. That's the business decision. All right. I think those are some good answers. I'm really just picturing Roblox Yasuo, because you'd have both versions. It's almost like, see, now my brain's going. You could do like an item thing where it's like every round you get an item, put it on the champion, they become the Roblox version of themselves, which is a buff and changes their classes and stuff like that. So it's like make your own trait. That could be kind of cool. Anyway, so there you go. Pokemon, Smash Brothers, Final Fantasy, Roblox. Those are my answers. Will any of those happen? No. No, at least not that I'm aware of. Now Hot Wheels. There you go. Yasuo driving around in his Ford Mustang to get an upgrade. I like it. It all goes back to the original answer. Your first instinct is your best one. Hot Wheels it is. All right. You heard it here. Set 16. TFT meets Hot Wheels. All right. Oh, and this one's interesting. Okay. So the next question. Sorry, 1 second. The next question is about summon traits. And they asked about summon traits with choices, and how after Storyweaver, which was this particular person's favorite, which had choices, in the learnings article, I talked about how there weren't really choices because it essentially always boiled down to a correct decision, right? Like some guide would come out and say, always build full blue or full red or whatever. And everyone just did that. And there weren't really choices. But the person asked, hey, doesn't Anima Squad prove that that's not really true? Because Anima Squad has plenty of choices, and it worked out fine. So couldn't we do summons with choices? And I'm laughing because this is actually a very relevant topic right now that, like, I think we're actually going to have some internal talks about. Because interestingly enough, when Anima Squad was getting made, this is one where I had to get involved, because the first version of Anima Squad that was pitched was very much a like build your own trait meets Swarm. So like you would pick Uwu Blaster and it would give your team 200 health, or you would pick, Bladerang and it would give your team 20% attack speed. Right? There were stats that weren't on the trait that would be attached to the weapons, so you could build your own trait. And what that ran into was, it was confusing, because it was like, wait, am I picking the weapon or the stats? And what would happen is everyone would just pick the stats they thought were good, right? Like in that example, if you say 200 HP is better, you always pick 200 HP, which means if you really like Bladerang, you can't pick Bladerang, which feels kind of bad. So what we ended up doing was going, okay, we need to scrap that, because one of our goals for Anima Squad is that you can pick the weapon that you think is the coolest. If you're just like, I think Bladerang is so cool, you can just pick it. So at one point we tried just like the weapons deal damage. They always deal the exact same amount of damage. But then we got a lot of pushback, especially from our finalization pod, that like, well, I don't know, like I'm being asked to make a decision, but I like my brain says this decision matters and there's no choice to it. Like I don't understand what I'm supposed to be choosing. And so my brain stops working and I go, I don't get it. And I had to push pretty hard where it's like, I understand that, but the goal here is you just pick the one you think is cool. So I would tell finalization pod, I'm like, just pick the one you think is neat. I'm like, but that's not how TFT works. I want to make a strategically informed decision. And so going back and forth, I finally was like, okay, what's the most bare minimum decision you could make that basically changes nothing, but still lets you feel like you made a strategic choice? And I went with, well, what type of damage is it, right? If they both do the same amount of damage, right? Weapon A, 200, weapon B, 200. But one of them you have a spark, and one of them you have a last whisper. Okay, you can pick. And that was, I think, just the right amount. Because, like, realistically, if you look at every Anima Squad tier list out there right now, nobody knows. They're all very similar. I think 7-piece is probably the closest to, like, imbalanced. And 7-piece is basically, do you want upfront true damage to melt them, or do you want physical, or do you want magic, right? Like, that's basically all the decision is. But that level of decision making is just enough. And again, to the doubt of a lot of people on our team, I think it worked out, but it took a while, right? Like, when Anima Squad first went to PBE, I think you saw a lot of those same type of reactions. Those same type of, well, what does this mean? So, car. How do I make a decision? And players really trying to solve it. It's interesting that the human brain always tries to solve it. People made their tier lists. They tried to solve it. And we have abstracted it enough that, like, it really doesn't matter. If you look at the data for Anima Squad, the difference in performance in weapons is minor. But of course, if I, like, fake numbers here, if I was like, hey, Annihilator has a 50.8% top 4 rate, and the Hurricanes have a 50.6% top 4 rate, someone would claim that Annihilator is the best choice. They really would, So, does that prove that we can make choices work? Not really, because if anything, Anima Squad is proof that we essentially abstracted the choice so much that it doesn't matter. So if the only way to make choices work is to make none of your choices matter, then why even give you the choice, right? Because then you're just creating a fake decision that players think they made a right or wrong decision when they really did nothing, right? I would hate if a player was like, oh, the reason I lost that Anima Squad game was because I picked Annihilator over Hurricane. And it's like, well, it might have made a small impact, but it didn't really change anything. Whereas, like, Storyweaver was like, oh no, you picked blue or red, you idiot, you always pick blue. It's so much better. Like, that's just a bad choice, right? Sorry. I think that's the first time I've sneezed on one of these walks. A little cold, that's why, I think. Anyway, so I don't know that Anima Squad has really proved that we've made choices work. But what I'll also say is that as a player, you really enjoy these choices. You're not the only one. Designers in particular, the way game designer brains work, is having all of those choices is fun, skill expressive. Like, that's the thing game designer brains really, really like. Whereas a lot of normal people brains are sort of like, decisions are hard, tell me the answer. So trust me that I'll say that every single trait that we get pitched in the future, or every single set, there's at least 2 origins where it's like, you choose from these 4 options. And it's like, because it's a common game design thing where it's like, well, I can't decide what this one thing is, but if I make it 2 things that I can't decide between and let the player choose, that will allow me to do both on the design side without having to make this really hard decision. And the player can feel like they get to make a cool choice and have an interesting decision as well. So it's a very rich design space that is really, really fruitful. But I don't know, I just keep coming back to, and I'm the one on the team that's a little bit of a anti-choice guy, just because, again, I always find that, like, we build a thing, we give player choices. It takes us 3 times as much energy to build it because we have to build out all these choices, balance all these choices, make sure they all work. And then the end result is, well, ignore 2/3 of the content because this is the right choice, you know? But who knows? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I keep going back to like, yes, Anima Squad shows that you can make it work by making the choice not matter. But if the choice doesn't matter, why is it there? In Anima Squad's case, it's there for flavor. But I don't think developing all those different weapons just for flavor. I mean, flavor's good though, right? Like, you definitely do want flavor in your game. God, sorry, the cold's making this worse. Sorry, the cold temperature, not Mike. I don't have a cold. Yeah. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of talking in circles at this point. Choice is good. Will they come back? Probably. Because if nothing else, designers want them to come back. But our challenge continues to be, have the choices matter, but have them not be a right or wrong answer. Like even something as simple as like, okay, imagine you could have a summon unit. We'll use Scion as an example since we just did him in set 13. And you could choose him to be a tank or damage dealer. Like those are your choices. Very simple binary choice, right? Well, based on all the units in the composition, actually, you know what proves this really, really well? The Golem encounter. I think the Golem encounter is a perfect example of how someone tried to build another choice thing. And then the reality is, well, it's not really a choice, right? Like most of the time, people are just tanking the tank Golem because you generally have a carry in most of your compositions. And having a secondary carry in the Golem is far worse than having a tank so that your main carry can do its job. So even something as simple as that almost boils down to not really having a choice. So I don't know. But again, will it come back? Probably. Am I still a choice doubter? Yeah. Yeah, I kind of am. But it'll be back. Okay, 2 more questions today. Okay, this one was a weird question. Someone said, what if TFT never existed? What do you think players would be doing with their time? That one's interesting. I think, if you look at any particular game, right? Like, what if Fortnite never existed? What if Roblox never existed? I think the general answer is, like, play something else, right? Like, there is enough video games out there that will latch people on, and players will play something else. So I don't think there's necessarily a giant, like, industry-wide issue if TFT or Fortnite or Roblox disappear. If they never existed. I don't think that much changes. I don't think TFT has revolutionized the industry in any way. But even games like Fortnite and Roblox, which have revolutionized the industry in some ways, even those I don't think would like drastically change the landscape if they didn't exist. But to give you a more satisfying answer, I think what you actually have to look at is the impact on League of Legends and Riot, right? Like, League of Legends is still generally doing pretty good. It's at that, post 15 year, not everyone struggling with new players, et cetera, that like every game older than 10 years old does. It's not league specific problems. It's just, when you're a 15-year-old game, it's hard to convince a 12-year-old to go play a 15-year-old game. But I think TFT bought some time there where it was like, having another game in that client was like, cool, I can switch between them. And we definitely saw in certain regions, like say Korea, where it was like, oh, ranked downtime, go play TFT. And then ranked back up, go play ranked, or switch between them. Or when you're with your friends, play League. When you're by yourself, play TFT, right? It created some like good patterns and some good connections to the Runeterra IP that I think if those hadn't existed, would be a different story. Like, would League be better off or worse off? I'm not sure. Because on the one hand, giving League players something else to play can make League played less. But on the other hand, giving them a reason to stay keeps them around long. So it's hard to guess for sure. I'd like to think that TFT has had a generally positive impact on the League and Runeterra ecosystem. But I can't say for sure. That's my hope anyway. I wonder if TFT had an impact on Legends of Runeterra. I don't think so, but just because they were so separate, and Lore's challenges are pretty separate from TFT's challenges, but you never know. And I think a lot of the people that like CCGs have actually bounced off of TFT for the most part. I always use Kibler as that example. But yeah. So I don't know if TFT never existed. And then there's, of course, the selfish version is what would I be doing? And I think what would I be doing is interesting, because what would probably have happened is I would have been on a different R&D project. I don't think I would have stayed on League. Actually, there's two realities. One is Andre would have been like, hey, we really need you to be on League. And at this point, I might be game design director on League of Legends, still there, trying to make champions work, because I'm stubborn and never asked to be moved off projects or anything, and helping Andre out there. Which, who knows, maybe that'd have had cool things for League. Or I would have been on some R&D project, and the challenge with R&D projects is Riot and Western game industry R&D takes forever. I don't do well in work on a game for 6 years that you might not ship. That's not me. I make things that I can ship in a year. Even at Nintendo, I think my longest project was 20 months. So, and even in that 20 months, you make such amazing progress. I don't know. It's something I've been doing this 20 years, but it's a very large part of the Western game dev industry that I've actually just had no part in. I always am assigned to projects or started projects that at least have some initial direction, and I get them out the door. I make them happen, right? And TFT is now a good example where it's even initially we kind of knew what we were building, right? It was based off auto chess. And then from there, it's just build a new set, come up with new ideas, improve the system, refine things. That's the goal. So, but who knows? Maybe, like I said, I basically look at my career as half over at this point. I've been doing this 20 years away from retirement. So maybe that's something I need to experience in the back half. So, could be good. But what I'll also close this question on is, I'm glad TFT exists, because it's fun. And I'll be honest, it's hard to play other games now because not a lot of other games give you that full sense of a game, from start to finish, where it's I'm going to start this team building journey. It has ups and downs, cool moments, high rolls, low rolls, tough things, very cinematic, in 40 minutes. So I think I've been playing Binding of Isaac again lately. And that's why I always liked Binding of Isaac. It was from start to finish, you play a 30-minute game of Binding of Isaac. A lot of things happen, a lot of cool story moments. Of I got this weapon, then I got this weapon, but I was struggling to find keys. But then I bombed a wall and I converted. Those stories are what make games fun to me. And the games that can condense that down to an hour are chef's kiss. So, okay, one more question to power through here. And it's a short one, so I still have time. Someone asked, what is your favorite breakfast? This one's easy for me. I have a very favorite breakfast. Growing up, my family, every Sunday we would make waffles. And whatever waffle maker we have, it has the really deep pockets, the big squares. And so you just fill those squares with butter and syrup, and you'd eat those pancakes. And sometimes, if Dad was feeling generous, they'd be chocolate chip waffles. So those chocolate chip waffles filled with syrup, each little pockets of syrupy, bready, chocolatey goodness. Oh, that's my favorite. So I still have a very big soft spot for waffles. Anytime we go out, it's you could have a big fancy omelet or whatever, but nah, I'll take a waffle. Just a nice, good, and not like a crap, like no Eggo waffles, none of that shit, or none of those waffles that are really thin that have the tiny squares. That's not a waffle. Like waffles have the we're talking 2 centimeter deep pockets. It's probably an exaggeration. It's probably closer to 1 to 1.5 centimeters, or a little less than an inch. Hi, chipmunk. There's a little chipmunk. Hi, chipmunk. But yeah, those waffles are my favorite. I don't get them that often, but when I do, those are the best. Now, weird thing enough, and this is Lucky Mort with his privileged life, is what I don't have much of, and probably haven't in a long time? Cereal. I barely ever eat cereal, which is crazy because I think in the United States, cereal is such a common breakfast choice, but yeah, I just never eat it. So yeah, waffles. Waffles are the best. All right, cool. Getting to the uphill part. It's been 31 minutes. It's a good time to end it. Time for the work day. My shelves come today. I'll post pictures tomorrow probably, but my shelves come at 9 o'clock today. I'm excited for that, which means I'm looking forward to the weekend where I can just start putting stuff on the shelves. That is something I am very much looking forward to. I find that very relaxing. So organizing my things is, I love it. So cool. All right. Hopefully you have a good day. Happy Tuesday. Patch day tomorrow. Patch notes will be up later today. Good stuff. All right. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.